Good evening. This is the regular meeting for the Select Board for Tuesday, November 9th, 2021. Let's go right into announcements and updates. Miriam, do you have an update that you'd like to share?
Yes, I have a few actually. For those of you that don't know, the good news is that vaccination for COVID has been approved for children ages 5 to 11. In fact, the public schools of Brookline is hosting COVID-19 vaccine clinics. The Tuesday, November 9 and Wednesday, November 17th are currently full, but you can check back if there are cancellations. The next available clinic will be on Tuesday, December 14th from 4 to 8 at the Florida Rough and Ridley School. You do have to go online to register, and registration will open on November 17th. The Brookline Department of Public Health will hold a COVID-19 vaccine clinic from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. on Sunday, November 14th, and a flu clinic that same day from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. Both of those will be at Brookline Town Hall. So you do need to register online. So please go to the Brookline Health Department website and register. And I cannot encourage you enough to go get vaccinated. And if those don't work for you, www.vaxfinder.mass.gov is a great way to find a place to get your poke. So go get poked. Go get your kids poked.
I heard that Big Bird got vaccinated.
I love Big Bird.
Yeah. Speaking of public health, Mel, did you have an announcement that you'd like to share?
I do. Thank you, Chair. So last spring, as you may recall, I developed a plan to advance the town's social services capacity, including a way to more effectively respond to public safety incidents with a crisis component. Both of those issues were addressed by both the police reform as well as the task force to reimagine policing. And I developed an initiative to at least start to implement that vision. And so this would be, the idea was to engage a senior level person who would assess the town's needs and what we're currently doing, and also work with consultants who would be engaged by the town to develop a long-term plan as to how we can manage and fund and hopefully expand the town's social service capacity. And as well as that, that person could be available and should be available to address immediate concerns or any lack of coordination of existing services or ways to make it more effective and coordinated. And so during my recent search for an interim leadership in the health department, I had the pleasure of meeting Harold Cox and beginning a dialogue with him about this initiative. After several discussions back and forth, we both became excited about this assignment and shared information about it, and decided to move forward. Harold Cox is a trained social worker and has many years in the trenches. He served over 10 years as Cambridge's public health officer. For the last several years, Harold has been an associate dean at the BU School of Public Health and an associate professor. I believe Harold Cox is the right person for this assignment, and I'm very excited to work with him as he begins to, in earnest, when his semester is over in mid-December. However, he has agreed to be engaged immediately to help with the Cahoots project that's beginning to get underway, as well as meeting with the many stakeholders that he'll need to talk with, including you and your board, about your vision for the town's social services. So with that, I just want to say I'm very pleased. I have had an opportunity to notify all the departments involved, and beginning now to also communicate with the chairs of various not only public boards and agencies, but also the private partners that we deal with. And I think my reactions so far have been very positive to Harold Cox. I wasn't sure if Mr. Cox would be able to be here tonight. And in fact, I don't believe he's here. So I will make sure to get him in front of the board very shortly. But happy to answer any questions about this initiative.
Great. Thank you so much for that announcement. Any questions from board members? Any other announcements by board members? Bernard, and then John, and then Raul.
Yes. So at the 11th hour on the 11th day of the 11th month of this year, 2021, the town's Veterans Day event will be held at Town Hall's World War Monument. As usual, Mr. McGroarty has organized a very meaningful and moving affair. It will not have the indoor refreshments at the VFW hall that we usually have because of the COVID, but it still should be an event that people will find meaningful and moving. So I urge everyone to, if they have a chance, to come out and social distance on Washington Street for the Veterans Day event for this year. I will be speaking to bring greetings from the select board. And it should be a very interesting and very good affair.
What time does that start?
11 o'clock.
Great. Okay. John?
Yes, thanks very much, Heather. Excuse me. I wanted to, if you would, just allow me a short time here to celebrate the life of someone who died within the past week or so. And that's Izzy Arbeiter, who was age 96 and was, in fact, a survivor of several concentration camps, including Auschwitz. And he was very well known in this area and played a very important and significant role in helping people to understand the reality of the Holocaust, and to also understand the reality of survivors among us who enrich our communities. If you don't mind, and I promise not to take too long, I just want to read something that was passed along from the Jewish Community Relations Council by Jeremy Burton. And this is what he said about Izzy Arbeiter. Attending his funeral and Shiva this week has been a blessing in itself. To witness the outpouring of memories, to retell the impact he had as a fierce advocate on behalf of his fellow survivors' needs, and as a passionate transmitter of memory of the Shoah to future generations. As co-founder of the New England Holocaust Memorial, and in many other ways, he had a long and deep history working in partnership with the Jewish Community Relations Council, and sometimes challenging us to do more. And the Globe also had an obituary that went into many of the really wrenching details of what Izzy and his family experienced. But most important word in this is survivor. He survived, and he brought the reality and the importance of that event in history to many, many people over many, many years. So just wanted to acknowledge an important person that we lost this past week.
Thank you, John. Raul?
John, thanks for that acknowledgement. I think that was really moving. And anyway, I also want to thank Mel for the introduction to Dr. Harold Cox, who's somebody that I know through my work at Boston University. I think he's an exciting pick for this role in helping us sort of really rethink social services in Brookline. And so thanks for that. Look forward to working with him. I wanted to briefly just congratulate. Last week was election. There was an election and a series of elections across the Commonwealth and particularly in this region. And there were a lot of folks who I think of as progressive champions who were elected or reelected in communities from Marlborough to Waltham to Everett, Somerville, Cambridge, and elsewhere. And none greater, I think, than Michelle Wu in Boston, who's a friend and I think is going to be a great partner for the town of Brookline as we sort of think about how we address regional issues like housing and transportation, addressing the climate crisis, racial justice, and our approach to social services as well. I think we've got a good partner in Mayor-elect, soon to be Mayor Wu. These are the kinds of folks that that Mel regularly engages with through the Metro Mayors group. And I think we as a select board have to start getting much more involved in connecting with, learning from, sharing information with our colleagues in communities in the region. I'm certainly going to be sort of hopefully connecting with some of the newly elected folks in the area and trying to bring some of those new ideas that they're sharing in their communities to Brookline for us to chew on, talk about, think over, and hopefully start to implement. It's time, and I'm really excited for what's happening in the region, and hopefully folks in our community will get on board and start thinking beyond Brookline's borders. So just want to say congrats to all those on their election victories, and thanks to all those who've served and are out of office now as well.
Great. If there are no other announcements, we can move to public comment.
Let's do it.
Okay.
All right. Well, folks, thanks for joining us for public comment. This is an opportunity for us to hear your perspective on the issues in Brookline that matter to you. We do have a few rules I'd like to share. Each person speaking tonight is limited to 3 minutes. You don't need to use the entire time, but you may if you like. Please refrain from personal attacks and from addressing personnel issues during your comments. Members of the public sometimes raise questions during public comment. We may be able to provide a quick answer to a question, but are more likely to work with staff to get a more thorough answer and respond over email. We'll let you know when you have 30 seconds remaining, and when time is up, please conclude your remarks at that time. If you have more to say, you're welcome to send an email to board members expressing your thoughts in greater detail. Devin, who's first up?
The first person signed up for public comment is Linda Pelkey. You've been promoted to a panelist. You can unmute and your 3 minutes will begin.
Thank you, Devin. Good evening. My name is Linda Olson Pelkey, Town Meeting Member Precinct 2, and I would like to comment on the Laboratory and Biolife Sciences report on your agenda tonight. I'd like to thank EDAB and the subcommittee that undertook this work for the valuable research and report. I agree the town should look for ways this tax revenue positive use might find a home in Brookline. However, I strongly disagree with the report's proposed implementation strategy, which calls for changing our zoning to allow these life science uses anywhere within our G, O, and I districts with only a special permit. Life science uses are potentially extremely impactful, and our zoning districts, especially the G district, contain a wide range of land uses, including much residential. While it's possible there may be a suitable site or two amongst this wide range of building and use types, these facilities should only be allowed in carefully selected and vetted sites. The report outlines the unique issues with life science buildings, including an industrial scale sewer hookup, extra tall floor to ceiling heights, and massive 25 to 30 foot rooftop HVAC equipment, which is extremely loud. Currently, our zoning does not even regulate rooftop mechanicals. These uses also tend to require very large footprints, and 600,000 square feet was the common size of the examples cited in the report. The proposal to widely permit these uses in our general business districts with only a special permit bypasses much needed community vetting, both in terms of appropriate siting, but also the public health concerns around living cheek by jowl with these uses. Once the right to develop these uses is granted through a zoning change, the town could find itself in the uncomfortable position of opposing the location of a proposed lab and trying to deny a special permit, only to find ourselves sued by the developer. I strongly urge the board to find a better balance by potentially including consideration of these uses only in the context of a limited corridor study in the manner of our past overlay study committee efforts, and to not agree to proactively upzone as is suggested by the report. I would also point out that identifying potential sites for these uses and regulating more specifically for their special requirements could be much better addressed through a holistic community planning and zoning reform effort. Thank you.
The next person signed up for public comment is Bonnie Bastian. You've been promoted to a panelist. You can unmute and share your video if you're comfortable. Your 3 minutes will begin.
Hey, everybody. This is Bonnie Bastian, town meeting member, precinct 5. I just wanted to thank the town administrator for getting this ball rolling with the cahoots and the hire of the social service person in Harold Cox. This is really, really important work. And I'm thrilled that it's moving. So that's all. I just wanted to thank you very much for your work on that.
Cahoots and or other options?
At this time, there are 15 attendees and no one has used the hand raise or Q&A feature to indicate they'd like to make a comment.
Great. Okay.
All right, back to you.
Thank you. So moving into our miscellaneous agenda, we've got meeting minutes from October 25th and November 2nd. Any edits or corrections? Does anyone object to me moving them both at the same time? Okay, I will do that then. I will move approval of the meeting minutes from October 25th, 2021 and November 2nd, 2021. All those in favor? Bernard?
Aye.
Raul?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Miriam?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. And then the other miscellaneous items, approving the authorization to hire request for the water and sewer director within the Department of DPW. Question of approving alternate managers for Netta, Ariel Harold, and Suzanne Resnick. Approving amendment number 16 to the contract with Jonathan Levy Architects for the Driscoll School project for geothermal system design services in the amount of $79,244. Approving an appropriation transfer in the amount of $26,522.06 for security enhancements to the public health building. Approving contract 2019 Master Services Agreement Task Order number 2 with Brown and Caldwell in the amount of $313,837. Approving a temporary wine and malt beverage non-sales license to Lars Anderson Auto Museum to be held on Tuesday, November 16th for luncheon presentation 12 to 3 p.m. at 15 Newton Street. About 50 people are expected to attend for that event. All those in favor? Yes, Bernard.
Yes, before we go, I'd like to ask Mr. excuse me, Mr. Kleckner, excuse me, to brief us on the status. I'm sorry. Brief us on the status of a deficiency notice issued by the Cannabis Control Commission regarding Netta's advertising. Netta advertised a one-day special, reduced pricing of products on its website for various products, which is prohibited. Now, I don't believe that this is a reason for holding up the appointment of these alternative managers, but the select board and the public should be aware of what I consider a serious violation of the rules under which cannabis retailers are supposed to operate. And I view this like the partnership with teenage idol Justin Bieber, though in that more egregious case, in my opinion, the Cannabis Control Commission found a way to avoid acting, even though Bieber was explicitly trying to destigmatize cannabis and underage individuals. You saw this as speaking directly to them. Now, in my opinion, whether Netta did this intentionally or inadvertently, Netta seems to be, in the Bieber case, testing the boundaries and testing what they can get away with. So I think it's important for us to just be aware of and monitor this latest deficiency that the Cannabis Control Commission levied against Netta. Thank you.
Mel, do you want to say a few words? I know that their license renewal is forthcoming in the next couple of weeks. You're muted.
Thank you. Just briefly, as Select Board Member Green stated, the Netta has received a notice of deficiency statement from the Cannabis Control Commission relating to one-day special product advertising. And this notice requires NETA to submit to the commission a written plan of correction. And when we will ask for that as well, and then we'll make other recommendations to the board relative to this license violation.
And we have our license renewals coming up.
January 1. It doesn't prohibit us from acting sooner, but in no, we would have to do a hearing in any case. So my assumption is that we will have a hearing on the renewal license. We'll proactively schedule that.
Okay.
Could I also, while I have a chance, you're on miscellaneous, and normally we don't dwell on miscellaneous items, but I did want to note that under item 3B, which seeks the authorization of the board to allow us to replace a vacant position, I did want to note that it's a very prominent vacant position. It's the water sewer director. Our incumbent Fred Russell has been appointed to become a public works director in a community north of Brookline, and we really will miss Fred and his really great stewardship of our water system, but wish him well and look forward to hiring his replacement. Thank you.
Right. So the motion for the miscellaneous consent agenda is still before us. Any other questions or discussion before I poll the board? Seeing none. All those in favor, Bernard,
Aye.
Raul,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Miriam,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. Okay, now board and commission interviews. The Brookline Village Parking Benefit District Advisory Committee. I believe we have Sarah Petrus. Good evening, welcome. So what we do generally is allow you to speak for about 90 seconds, just give an overview of who you are, why you're interested in serving, and then I'll open it up to questions by the board.
Am I to go first?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't hear that first part.
So we usually give you about 90 seconds to just describe who you are, why you're interested, and then I'll open it up to the board for questions.
Oh, terrific. Great. Well,
Okay.
thank you for this opportunity. I'm really excited to talk to you guys about the village. I am a new business owner in Brookline Village. I had been managing and co-buying for a boutique out in Chestnut Hill called Portobello Road for 12 years, and just recently opened a boutique called Cadeau Boutique and Gallery in 214 Washington Street, right next to the Village Works. And Meredith Mooney, at Economic Development, she had recommended this position, and I'm really happy to apply for it, because one of my reasons for opening the boutique in the first place was to be a neighborhood go-to shop for all of your gifting needs, and also a communal space where we have art gallery openings and lectures and things of that sort. And what I like so much about the village, and why I chose it after having been a resident from Coolidge Corner for 12 years, is the energy in the village. I think it's gone through various iterations with different owners, different businesses, and I just think the charm is unparalleled in comparison to the other centers. And of course, I have an interest, being a business owner, to want to make it even more vibrant. And already I've become close to various other boutique owners like Serenade Chocolatier, Curds and Co., Brothers and Sisters Coffee Shop, and I'm very close friends with Susan Healy of HC Studio. Bring my nephew to the puppet show, the puppet master, I forget the name.
Showplace.
Puppet show place. And I've met so many residents being open for about 2.5 months. And I'm getting a sense of what they're craving too in their neighborhood. They've been very appreciative of my opening a store in the center. And so I'm just really excited to get more involved and meet more folks and just talk about how things can improve. I'm not sure where things stand today on your side for the village, and I'm just really energetic about it. So I think that probably sums it up for me.
Great. Any questions by select board members? Are you familiar with what a parking benefits district has the potential to do?
As far as I understand, it is a committee where we determine what to do with the money that comes from the meters and the parking spaces, the meters and the parking lots. And I am not familiar with how those funds are allocated. That's what I was hoping to learn a little bit about today. But I don't know that process. And yeah, I'm happy to learn and contribute to the discussion if I'm chosen.
Well, that was 60% of it, so don't worry.
Okay.
Bernard.
Sorry. Yes, thank you for applying for this committee. I mean, it's a very important committee. And you're opening a store in a very congested area of Brookline Village. And remember, the committee makes recommendations to this body. It doesn't really itself carry out or implement any ideas. But I was wondering if you had any thoughts about both parking issues as well as just general cityscape issues that that would improve the Brookline Village Business District, both in terms of access of people who get there by car, as well as the surrounding community that, or the city streetscape and other amenities that we have there.
Yeah, so I have found, I think COVID has produced a different environment in Brookline Village regarding parking. I've been going to Brookline Village for 10 years to get my hair done over at Susan's salon at HC Studio. And I have not yet once had trouble finding parking. When the construction was happening over at the, I believe it was the Children's Hospital area, across from the T station, that was very challenging and frustrating. My customers that have come over from Portobello Road, which was at the street shopping plaza where the parking was very, there was plenty of parking. I have not had any complaints. I've not had any concerns other than the parking meter is jammed. And I've seen it a number of times in front of my store that the parking meters, the coins get jammed, or the parking application's not working, or the credit card's not working, just basic, simple things like that. But I haven't heard of issues around there being deficiencies in places to park. I do know, however, that, as life continues to improve and get better in this pandemic, that the congestion will likely increase. But having gone there for so many years, this is the lightest I've seen the parking, all of the cars. Well, traffic is still pretty intense, but the parking situation hasn't been so intense.
Thank you. John?
Hi, Sarah. I sort of feel like I know your story a little bit because I was at a meeting of the Economic Development Advisory Board a while back where there was a presentation made on pop-ups. And sure enough,
Oh, yeah.
you were the star of the show, or your cadeau was the star of the show. Insofar as a story of how something that began as a pop-up, was spawned the idea for a shop in a
Mhm.
permanent location. And that's just why I mentioned that, because I think one of the great attributes that you bring to this position, among several attributes, is that you know what that's all about. You've done a pop-up, and you know the potential of pop-ups. You know how pop-ups can become permanent retail installations. And I happened to walk by Cadeau the other day, and I was just dazzled. It really
Oh,
is.
thank you.
It's terrific. And I think the prospect of having you in a position where, whether it's parking or, you can name a host of issues for merchants in the village, but to have you in a position where you're in regular contact with the other merchants in the village is going to be a real benefit. And I think I get the feeling you really understand what the village is all about. So I hope I didn't embarrass you with praise here, but I
No,
did want
it's
I
welcome.
did want you to know, I've experienced a little bit of your story, and I really appreciate that you have applied for this position.
Thank you. Thank
Sure.
you.
Great. Any other questions by board members? This is a board that I am particularly excited to have staffed with, people that I think will do very good work. So we will be appointing shortly. Thank you very much for your interest.
All right. My pleasure. Thank you very much, everyone. Thanks for your time. Great to see you all.
Great. So next, I believe we have a presentation that was mentioned in public comment, the Economic Development Advisory Board Life Science Report.
Isn't there a second person being interviewed, or did I miss that?
I think that person needed to reschedule, so it's been postponed.
Thank you.
Hi, Cliff, and I understand that you are going to be joined by Carol. Great. So you'll have to unmute yourselves, and then we'll listen to your presentation.
I think.
Okay, thank you. So, hello, everybody. We, I think, sent ahead a very summary presentation of our report. And I'm going to briefly walk through that and touch upon the summary conclusions and action steps that the subcommittee came up with. Just as a question, do you want that to be up on the screen, or would you like me to just go through it? It's really a question of what you want for the public, I guess.
Let's have something up on the screen.
Okay. So, okay, here we go. All right, can everyone see that?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so we're going to try to make this quick and give some time for questions. The EDAB subcommittee spent about 8 months, I'd say, talking to developers, looking at the market, talking to residents, talking to departments in town, and talking to a number of communities around the Boston metro area to try to understand what was going on and what the future might hold for this particular property use. And now the first thing any real estate person will do when they are looking at an opportunity to try to understand what the market is and what the market prospectively will be, because real estate development is a long-term bet on a marketplace. Boston is one of the countries and actually one of the world's leading real estate markets for lab space and bio uses. And I would say that every expert in the industry and all of the folks here in the Boston area believe that that will continue to be. We have a wonderful infrastructure, both institutional and corporate, to make sure that the Boston market continues to develop and participate as that industry continues to grow. Brookline is, not surprisingly, very well positioned locationally to participate in the market, even though today the number of viable sites are limited. But there's an emphasis there on locationally well positioned. That means we've got a couple of good things going for us. At the same time, we are missing a couple of very important things. In particular, an appropriate zoning rule for this use, as well as an appropriate and in-place public health regulatory infrastructure. And why are those important? Well, part of the reason they're important is because of what's happening around us. Now, the Massachusetts Biotech Council has evaluated 84 different municipalities in Massachusetts and has ranked them along a metric starting with bronze, the bottom, moving up to silver, gold, and then platinum. Brookline, along with Dracut, Lawrence, Sturbridge, Arlington, Braintree, Fitchburg, among others, is in the bottom. We're bronze. In contrast, Needham and Watertown are gold. Newton, Cambridge, Boston, Lexington, Norwood, Watertown, Quincy, Revere, Somerville, Waltham, Malden, and many, many others are all rated platinum. So we are surrounded by communities who have much better infrastructure, regulatory and zoning than we do. And without getting close to where they are, the fact that we have a great location and some viable sites will not matter, because we will not be able to provide to either a developer or, more importantly, a user, whether it be a corporate user or an educational user, institutional user. We will not be able to provide certainty and relatively predictable timing of when a project can get done. And opportunities like this, when there's plenty of opportunities around the metro area, people take a path of least resistance. Our locational benefits will not be sufficient. So what do we suggest the town do? Well, we suggest that the town, meaning you, the select board, direct the town administrator and appropriate departments, and that would be the planning department, the legal department, and the health department, to propose both new zoning and an appropriate regulatory framework, bylaws, to town meeting by next fall. Now, the subcommittee, did a lot of work here. We tried to pull together best practices from communities around the area. And obviously, in our report, came up with some recommendations regarding definitions and structure for a regulatory scheme. We think the R&D definition should be as broad as possible, because this is 21st century research. The way medical research is done today, it's not Bunsen burners. It's as much computer as it is actual lab space. So you want to include life sciences, biotech, biomedical research, robotics, medical devices, so on and so forth. Again, as the planning department works on this, they can come up with additional uses that we might be interested in. Any bioscience use should be limited to biosafety level 1, and biosafety level 2 as defined by the CDC. And we can talk more about that later, but that is designed to, frankly, keep pathogens out of the community. It is certainly well within what is most developers and users that we want to attract would be happy with. The uses should be allowed only by special permit. And in our general business, office, industrial, and GMR zones, as well as the Emerald Isle overlay district. Now, I did not hear much of the commentary that came earlier. I did catch a little bit at the very end. We did think long and hard about this. And our view is that because of the limitations that exist under a present zone, any modified provisions would likely be needed to be adopted by town meeting for any development going forward with these definitions that we're talking about. So we're going to have a zoning framework, but we believe that the current limitations that exist are going to force these projects, which will be major impact projects, to go through the rigorous community involvement and involvement by town meeting that we have seen with all of our other major impact projects. We do not believe that what is being proposed here would in any way eliminate that requirement. Again, I did not hear all the comments before, but I think we would feel that they were perhaps suggesting that things would be easier than they're going to be. On the regulatory side, and this is really very important. It's very important for the town. It's very important for the users that are going to come in here to understand what they're going to be dealing with. The health department, which has looked at what we put into our report, that was not done in a vacuum. We talked to Dr. Jett, and since then we have also spoken to or staff has spoken to the temporary or acting head of the health department. We want to establish a framework for the oversight, licensing, and monitoring of public health and safety aspects of all these laboratory operations. We believe we should be establishing a biosafety advisory council with outside experts to support the health department. We believe that we should allow animal research using lab-bred mice and rats, as well as other non-warm-blooded animal species. And we would recommend not allowing research using warm-blooded animals, including non-human primates. We would also suggest creating a town oversight program consistent with federal and state guidelines, of which there are significant ones. And then again, create a registration process for biosafety level 1 labs, and licensing process for biosafety lab 2 laboratories. We believe that a 10 Brookline Place study committee should be formed and operating by this coming January. We can talk a little bit about that in questions. And we believe that the fiscal 23 budget should provide for quarter studies to further explore opportunities for this use, in particular for Chestnut Hill West.
You have 1 minute.
I should say that, I'm sorry, I should be able to do it. I should say that there would be a requirement for additional resources, certainly for the health department, in terms of being able to put in effective regulation in practice. So that is a consideration that needs to be thought about. The net fiscal impact tax year should exceed easily traditional office and hotel uses on a per square foot basis, excuse me. Traffic and parking impacts should be less than medical office buildings. The design requirements are unique, but specific project features could be substantially consistent with our sustainability goals and requirements. Now, it's a very quick run through of all the major points in our report. Carol and I will attempt to answer any questions you have at the moment. And I thank you for your time.
Great, thank you, Cliff. So Linda actually sent us a copy of her remarks, and I'm just kind of perusing them. But one of the issues that she brought up was, tie into sewer, and that it will require industrial. What is the, I guess, current status of our infrastructure, and how concerned should we be about that tie-in?
I'll
Well,
take that if you want.
Please, Carol.
So we did look into this. We're a member of the MWRA, and they deal with all of the regulation and licensing. There'll be a requirement to get an industrial waste permit. That's their regulations. It is not up to our our town to regulate the discharge. They have well-developed regulations, and if there is a concern about what is being discharged and the ability to handle it, they will be picking up on that.
So when you say they, you mean MWRA?
Yes.
Okay. Any other comments or questions by select board members? Don't forget to use the raise your hand feature. John.
Yeah, thanks, Heather, and thanks, Cliff. Thanks also to everyone on the Life Sciences Subcommittee of EDAB that's been working on this. I want to say a couple of things. First of all, from the perspective as chair of the Boylston Street Corridor Study Committee, we've had the good experience of working with Bullfinch Companies, which are the owners of 10 Brookline Place. And this is of interest to them. And the town is going to be hearing more about it in the future. So, people should think of this in very realistic terms. It is something that quite possibly Brookline will have a chance to decide on as a use in our town, a very significant use in terms of its contribute. I mean, life sciences is such an important contributor to the economic engine of the greater Boston area. And I think it could be a very important economic contributor to Brookline as well. I think it goes without saying, some very, very important work is being done in life sciences that it's exciting to be a part of that. All of the particular issues with life science developments that have been mentioned so far tonight are issues that other communities are well aware of and have had to deal with as they usher in life science developments. And they've surmounted those issues. And I'm confident that Brookline can surmount those issues. That doesn't mean that it's a foregone conclusion that people will welcome this development, but I think we need to make sure that they are well informed, that they have an opportunity to listen and to learn as much as possible about this use. And I do hope that after they have that experience, they will welcome this, because I think the potential is enormous. The most recent of the announcements that have been in the paper, and by the way, announcements of this or that new life sciences development come at a frequency that is amazing. This really is what is driving the investment market these days in terms of development in Greater Boston. And the most recent of them is the Buckminster Hotel, which I think a lot of people are probably familiar with in Kenmore Square. But there have been developments of this nature proposed in the Fenway, developments of this nature that are being worked on towards fruition in Newton. in Watertown, I believe in Waltham. And so Brookline has an opportunity here that I hope we will enter into with eyes open and with all the information necessary. But it's one that I think we should explore. And I think that the work of Cliff and others on the Life Sciences Committee has really helped to get this started. So I just wanted to thank them for that.
Great. Any other questions or comments by select board members? I guess my question to you folks is, do you need a vote from us at a meeting? So ponder that, and then I'll call on Miriam.
Thank you. I just want to say that, this is your recommendations for a CDC level 1 or 2 lab. Level 1 and 2 labs are really, I'm fairly benign in terms of risk to the surrounding community. And so I really want to emphasize that, we are not talking about Ebola. We're talking about E. coli. So I think that there's a benefit here that needs to be evaluated. And I think having a very sharp, lens on safety is important, but in the terms of safety to the community because of what's being studied, I think that that's something you could put very comfortably down and say that's really not going to be one of the issues here, since we're really keeping it to level 1 and 2.
I had heard that was a particular sticking point for our previous director of public health, Dr. Jett.
Well,
I will say
Go ahead,
that
Carol.
our recommendations are really in conformance with all of our surrounding communities and track very closely with Watertown. So yes, Dr. Jett was very firm in that, but this is basically what the larger Boston metropolitan area community is doing.
Great. So will you need a vote by the select board, or is this just a recommendation for us to ponder and we do with it what we like?
Well, I guess that's a good question. I'm trying to understand what it is that you would vote, because this obviously is a report with recommendations. You certainly could vote to
Adopt
adopt the recommendations, sure. In particular, the instructions to the town administrator, the study committee, and some of the budget ideas. That certainly is something that you could do by adopting the recommendations.
Great. Bernard, and then John, and then Raul.
Yes, thank you. I hear what Miriam and Carol Levin have said regarding safety issues, and particularly the objections of Dr. Jett. However, although he's not our public health director anymore, I would like to get a sense of what his objections were, and how specifically they have been addressed. Not just that we're following Watertown, but what specifically were his objections, and how are they being addressed?
I think maybe we confuse things. He supported biosafety levels 1 and 2. He did not want us doing biosafety levels 3 and 4. So he was not objecting to our recommendation. He was concurring with us and encouraging us not to wander beyond biosafety levels 1 and 2, which we were not inclined to do anyways.
Great. Thank you, Carol. John, and then Raul. You'll have to unmute.
I was going to make the exact same correction that Carol just made. So Carol, thank you. Yes, exactly. Dr. Jett actually was okay with 1 and 2, but not with anything above 1 and 2. On the question of any votes required tonight, I was simply going to ask, is Paul Sainer from EDAB here tonight as an attendee? I didn't know whether he had anything to say on whether particular votes of the select board would be of assistance and perhaps in one case or another necessary for this work to continue. Ultimately, so many of these decisions are going to be based on regulations that are drafted, and then there'll be some votes to be taken ultimately at town meeting. So none of this is final, but if there are particular votes that would help them move to the next stage of their work, I just wanted to find that out.
I don't see him on the list of attendees, though I think maybe he's watching on Big, but I did text him in response to Heather's question, and he would appreciate there being a vote
Okay.
in support of our recommendations.
It won't be tonight. We typically do not vote the same night that we hear a presentation, but I will put it in the queue and we will have a discussion amongst ourselves as to what we want to do with these recommendations. Raul?
Thanks, Heather. Yeah, I mean, I don't see how we move forward at some point without a vote, because essentially what we're being asked to do is to ask the town administrator to put staff effort into this. So my question was actually for Mel, as far as you're seeing right now, and also if you need some time to further review and get back to us, let us know. Is this something that you feel staff are prepared to take on? And is the timeline, I think it was to have something in front of town meeting for fall 2022, is that a reasonable timeline for this?
I believe so.
Okay, great. That's all I have.
Great. Thank you for this presentation. Any concluding thoughts?
Not for me. Carol?
I would just like to also acknowledge the role of both Paul Sainer and Marilyn Newman, especially Marilyn, who provided us the important legal expertise so we could understand the regulatory framework of the other communities that are the basis for our recommendations.
I had the pleasure of working with her on the Land Bank Study Committee, and she is awesome.
Yes.
Great. Thank you very much for pulling this together and submitting it for our consideration.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too. Okay, so moving into warrant articles, we still have some unfinished business there regarding sidewalk obstructions, warrant article 6. I see Melissa.
Good evening.
Good evening. So what's the latest on sidewalk obstructions?
So we just have to deal with a minor edit made by the advisory committee. If you have your packet, it's on page 152. They added the words "or cross" and "or tree lawn" to the very first part of the warrant article. So I'll just read how it would be amended. So no person shall place or cause to be placed in any street or upon or across any sidewalk or tree lawn of the town. And then the rest of the article is exactly how you voted it. So that is the change that we would need you to consider in order to be on the same page with the advisory committee.
Any discussion? This seems pretty straightforward. Bernard? You'll have to unmute.
Yeah, just one question. I think this is a really important article, but my concern is, and I don't think that we talked about this previously, is that it doesn't seem to cover, or does it, tree roots growing into the ground under a sidewalk and pushing the sidewalk concrete up, which is I don't know, it seems a significant problem, at least in my forays through town. Is that covered? And if it is, I guess we also have to get some sense from the town arborist as to you know, how this is addressed.
So I don't know about tree roots, whether or not that is part. I just did a word search to see if it's referenced in the article, and I don't see that.
Mel, did you have something that you wanted to say?
Well, I'm reluctant to weigh in, but I don't think it does. I mean, frankly, the town's trees have more problems with tree roots and sidewalk disruptions than anyone. So, you know, I'm guessing that's probably not that practical of a inclusion.
I would say, Bernard, if you don't have language already worked out, I don't think that it's appropriate to play around now. Leave
No,
that
I
to
wasn't
another warrant
suggesting that.
article.
No,
Okay.
I wasn't suggesting that. I just think that it's something that we should think about at some point, because that is a big problem.
Yes, I see Erin Galentine.
Good evening, Erin Galentine, Commissioner of Public Works. So the town's public shade trees are regulated under Mass General Law and are not covered in this bylaw. They're regulated separately with the tree planting committee, and you know, when we address tree root issues separately as they may impact sidewalks. So that is not part of this bylaw amendment.
Great, thank you for that clarification, Erin. I thought I saw a hand up, but I think the point is probably moot. Okay. So a very straightforward, I think, prepositional change. Any other comments? Miriam?
You know, I would just encourage a yes vote on this. The Disability Commission has really worked with Erin's team to you know, put something together that addresses a lot of needs. So I've seen that work, that side of it. So I will be voting yes, and I encourage you to join me.
Great. Raul?
Only just to confirm that a yes vote would put us in alignment with the AC, but also the petitioners who are the town, right? Who is Erin and Sarah and the staff, and just I'm seeing nods of yes. So just this means we'll come together with one united front on this, and I'm with Miriam on approving this.
Great. John?
I am absolutely in favor of this. At the same time, I do have a question about it, and I think it's more or less a question about enforcement, because the wording is that there shall not be any obstruction that, let's see, well, there shall not be anything that obstructs free passage of travelers. So I wonder if Erin can just answer for me. Does she anticipate that will be interpreted as, you know, if you go out there and you have a sort of a stick and you go to the edge of the sidewalk and the stick stands straight up and there is something that is past where that stick is, that has to be removed? Or is the interpretation, if it maybe, you know, intrudes a little bit, but not so as to obstruct the free passage of travelers, that's okay? Because I do see a lot of those situations around town, you know, a little bit of obstruction, but not enough so as to block travel.
Right, and that's a great question. I mean, the current bylaw actually doesn't allow obstructions for the passage of travel, and specifically what we're trying to deal with are these obstructions that are actually kind of growing up and over into the public way. But we're looking at ADA and ProWag. So we're looking at the 36 and 48 inches, scaling that back. So, you know, I guess, you know, if there isn't an obstruction and there's free passage on the public way, and there are no complaints and it complies with ProWag, then I think we're in good shape. If for some reason there is a complaint, then we'll need to look at that and see why, you know, potentially it may be, there may be an grievance from someone in the public. Generally, what we are dealing with is very clear. We really aren't splitting hairs to that degree when we go out and take a look at some of these complaints that come in.
All right, thanks.
Bernard?
Yeah, you used an acronym a couple of times, PROAG. Could you tell me what that is?
Oh my gosh, now I'll have to look this up for you.
Oh, you don't know? I thought it was just
I
me.
do know, I do know, but
It's a federal regulatory framework regarding
it is
ADA accessibility.
very, right. The public right-of-way accessibility guidelines.
Great, thank you.
Excellent. Any other comments? Okay, so first I need to move reconsideration. So I will do that first, and then we will consider the AC's amendment. So reconsideration, vote first. All those in favor, Bernard,
Aye.
Raul,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Miriam,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. So now the motion is to move favorable action on the AC's version of warrant Article 6. All those in favor, Bernard,
Aye.
Raul,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Miriam,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. Thank you all for answering all of these questions.
Thank you. It's nice going into town meeting with a unified front on this.
I know.
Have a good evening.
Thank you. Okay, so the next warrant article is about hybrid meeting technology, known as warrant Article 12.
So Article 12 is also in your packet. You'll see that the petitioner has a revised motion and a revised explanation. That was presented last week to the advisory committee. The board's current position is the advisory committee position, or at least it was the advisory committee position. The advisory committee did some additional tweaks from what the petitioner presented last night. So we are closer, but the petitioner's language is more prescriptive in terms of a timetable and having all rooms outfitted for hybrid, whereas the advisory committee language is a little bit more relaxed. I have not received the AC motion yet. So the only thing that I have in terms of language is the petitioner motion. And I believe you also got an email from Mike either last week or over the weekend explaining his position as well.
So Mike is here if people want to hear from him. Let's promote him, and maybe he can summarize very briefly.
Hi, folks.
Hi, Mike.
Hello. Mike Toffel, town meeting member, precinct 8, and a co-petitioner on Article 12. So the article that we are, the petitioner's motion differs slightly from our original warrant article language, notably in providing a timetable that we negotiated with great help from Devin and from Feng, of their town staff leaders, to figure out what timetable is feasible from staff's perspective to install hybrid technology in the various rooms to enable hybrid meetings. It turns out, as you may already know, these efforts are already underway, leading with the select board hearing room, also the school committee hearing room, and then the front two rooms in town hall are the top priority of Devin and Feng's efforts. So instead of our original version said, let's get it all done in a year, the new version says, let's get 4 rooms done in roughly 6 months, 8 rooms in a year, and then the rest in about a year and a half. And that's the language you'll see. Again, that schedule came through the helpful discussions with town staff. The other thing we've learned since we initially proposed this thanks to Melissa, is that these investments are eligible for ARPA funding should select board or whoever makes that decision choose to allocate funds in that direction.
So are you in agreement with the AC version?
No, so thank you for that question. So the AC initially proposed a very, like their initial version, which the select board supported, was changing the 1-year goal from getting it done to having a plan. Clearly, staff already has a plan, which they, helpfully described to us. So AC saw our motion and took most of it, took our new motion as the basis of their new tweaks. And so they've tweaked it to soften it, as Melissa said, in ways that I can't quite describe either, because I haven't seen the final motion either. It's not in the combined reports. But the idea basically, if I remember correctly, Melissa, maybe you can help here, is one of the tweaks they made was to the third deadline, right? So they agreed with the first 2 deadlines, the 6-month and the 1 year. And they said, let's learn and figure out whether we need to do them all in 6 months further from that, or whether you might want more time. My response to that is, this is a resolution, not a bylaw. So of course we'll learn over the course of the year. And I trust our staff to figure out what makes sense. Our goal of the petitioners here is to enable all public meetings to be hybrid. It's not to install technology wherever we can install technology. So if we find that 8 rooms actually enables all public meetings to be held through hybrid, then that might well suffice. I think my conversation with Devin suggests that sometimes that might not suffice. And so we'll figure that out over the next year. But we wanted to keep the milestone be in place to say, let's make sure we get all meetings in public. There was one other change. One of the resolutions statements talked about our goal was to have the select board and the moderator insist that all meetings, once the technological and legal hurdles are overcome, to insist that all meetings be hybrid equipped or remote equipped, or hybrid or remote, in the sense of not allowing meetings to occur that require you to come to town hall or to wherever the meeting is in order to afford access to those who are not able to join in person. And I believe that was softened in the AC motion as well. But perhaps Melissa could chime in just to make sure I'm fairly representing the changes.
Yeah, I mean, that is what I recall as well, is that, I think that the AC is a very, they pay attention to the language in resolutions, even though the claims of it's just a resolution, don't worry. They've definitely seen other resolutions where, town meeting has been very explicit about things and wanting to make sure that they're followed through. So that's why they kind of provided a little bit more flexibility in their motion. I think we are going to learn a lot, and, as long as there's an understanding with the petitioner about, our town staff and kind of using the information that we're learning to make recommendations for hybrid meetings. I think we can, we can work with either version. But obviously, a more flexible version is always desired, but, I think we can make either one work.
Thank you very much for that synopsis. So, John.
Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you, everyone who's commented so far. So I'm in favor of flexibility, and here's why. And I don't want anyone to misunderstand what I mean by that. I absolutely welcome and encourage that we do as much hybrid meeting as we possibly can, because the more the merrier. With a hybrid meeting, you get 2 different means of attending, and you get the possibility of even wider participation by the public. Great. Now I want to just read to you the list of meetings just today, that involve Brookline boards and committees. 9 a.m. Small Business Development Committee, 1 p.m. Age Friendly Cities Committee, 2 p.m., Community Engagement Subcommittee of the Commission on Diversity, Inclusion, and Community Relations, 3 p.m., Indigenous Peoples Celebration Committee, 4 p.m., School Policy Review Subcommittee meeting, 4:30 p.m., Brookline Housing Authority Board of Commissioners, 6 p.m., Building Commission meeting, 6 p.m. Oh, I want to just emphasize all of these that I'm going to read now are occurring simultaneously, even as we speak. 6 p.m., Building Commission meeting, 6 p.m., Park and Recreation Commission meeting, 6 p.m., Select Board meeting, 6:15 p.m., the Board of Library Trustees meeting, 6:30 p.m., Preservation Commission, 7 p.m., Conservation Commission, 7 p.m., Shared Mobility Advisory Committee, 7 p.m., Board of Appeals Virtual Public Hearing, 7:30 p.m., Commission on Diversity, Inclusion, and Community Relations Immigrant Advancement Committee. So I hope this makes the point that it isn't going to be the easiest thing in the world to staff every meeting and to find the technology of it, make the technology available for every meeting to be hybrid. If it isn't possible to staff it, or if it is unduly expensive to staff it, or if you decide we will do everything in our power to staff it, but somebody can't show up to provide the services on any given evening, or we can't find the technical fix, the technological fix to enable just the participants to figure out how to make it work as a hybrid meeting, that we're not going to shoot ourselves in the foot and say that, you know, this meeting or that meeting or the other meeting wasn't legitimate and is challengeable under some kind of violation of our commitment to this these hybrid meetings. We've got to do the best we can, but I think we got to be realistic about what is the best we can do. And so I want us to maintain some flexibility as we move forward on this.
Miriam.
Thank you. So I'm going to use that same, sorry, the dog is calling. I'm going to use that same list without listing it. Thanks, John, for listing that. And point out that some of those meetings are during the day and some of us have day jobs. So if I want to be coming to some of those meetings, then that hybrid opportunity allows me to both participate as a working single mother and also be a part of my town government. And so I think that the flip side is we have to do better. We have to figure this out as best as we can. And part of that is, in fact, I think, trying to do this, learning from it, maybe even being an example for other communities to how to get this done. And by the way, to me, this is a absolute penultimate perfect use of ARPA funds. This is exactly what I think of. Like this is something that came out of the pandemic. This is a good use of one-time funds to build the technology. This is about accessibility, inclusivity, transparent government. I mean, this is what it's about. So I'm not saying you're wrong, John. I'm just saying we just have to do it anyway. I just think we have to do it anyway. So I'm in full support of this. And if Bonnie and Mike, if the original petitioners are fine with the AC language, then I'm fine with the AC language. Oh, I see Bonnie. All right. So tell me, talk to me.
Yeah, maybe Bonnie can speak to this, but sorry if I misled you, Mary. We are not in support of the AC's alternative.
So he outlined the difference was the last deadline of the third and softening of the language in the beginning.
Correct.
Any other discussion? Oh, sorry, Raul.
Thanks, Heather. Yeah, I think Miriam saved me some time because I just echo her sentiments on this. I think there are times when certainly the AC's review of warrant articles, including resolutions, I think can be helpful. I think there are other times, and this is one of those times, where we're sort of essentially moving something that's different than what the petitioners want to bring to town meeting, particularly in a resolution format, is not really helpful for us. And whereas we could have one debate on the petitioner's motion, now we're essentially going to be having debates on this motion, that motion, or neither one of them. And it, particularly when the differences here are relatively small, still meaningful, but relatively small. It seems that the petitioner always has to come in line with the AC rather than the AC coming in line with the petitioner. And it's just frustrating to watch. It's got to be frustrating for petitioners to have to keep going back and back as these relatively minor but significant and not acceptable changes are made to petitioners. And I can't even imagine like what kinds of barriers that puts up for people being willing to run the gauntlet of going to the AC and the select board, not to mention other boards, committees, and commissions that want to weigh in on these kinds of things. You know, I didn't get a chance to vote last time on this because I wasn't at that meeting. But I'll cast my vote with the petitioner's version. Hopefully we can move that forward and have a discussion. I think what Mike said is right, is, you know, they're going to be, first of all, one, if we are in favor of this, then the money shouldn't be an issue. I agree with Miriam. We should be able to use ARPA funds to purchase whatever technology we need to make this happen. I think it's relatively short money for big gain. And then it's about figuring out the plan, and then we need to adjust accordingly. I think the petitioners know, you know, this board doesn't intend to make promises that it can't keep, and staff won't either, and that we need to basically make our best efforts at making this work. As we learn what the challenges are, try to adapt and overcome those challenges. And then to the extent that there are things within the resolution that we can't meet, or at least can't meet on time, we need to be able to explain to them and to the public in the future why we couldn't do that after making our best efforts to meet what town meeting at that point has asked us to do. I mean, this isn't rocket science here. So I'm going to support the petitioner's motion, and hopefully others will too.
Miriam?
Yeah, I just want to clarify, I will also be supporting the petitioner's motion.
So I have some thoughts. Bonnie, do you want to say something before I speak?
I just wanted to mention that the timeline is a year and a half from now. We're not talking about launching this program in a week. So there's plenty of time to be able to have this learning curve. And, you know, when I think about all of the meetings that we have, I can't think about one that should be closed from someone having access to. If one of us was ill or sick, especially in this context that we're in, and unable to show up in person, I mean, this is essential. You know, any one of those meetings that happened today should be accessible to everybody. It's a civil rights issue, and it's always been a civil rights issue. And so now we have to make it right.
Okay. So this is where I find myself. I am pleased to see that the petitioners worked so closely with Melissa and Devin, who are two of our staff who are impacted by the subject matter of this warrant article. But I don't think that we have our IT director on board with the petitioner's version. So I'm going to come down on the side of protecting our staff. And I mean, I totally support the values behind this warrant article, but as the agency that's going to have to roll this out, I have to rely on staff to tell me whether or not they can get it done. And we had this same conversation when it came to composting. If you don't have the most impacted department head on board, then it's a problem, at least for me. Mike, do you want to say something?
Yeah, this is either you're mistaken or I'm mistaken. And maybe we can ask Devin to tell us who is mistaken. Because my understanding is that Devin has been working with Fang all along, and that Fang was an integral part of the schedule, along with lots of other staff consultations that Devon's been doing to ensure she fully understands what staff impact is. So and Ben spoke in favor of the petitioner's schedule at AC. So I'm totally puzzled by what you're saying, Heather.
Fung hasn't
Okay,
seen
maybe-
the AC. Fung hasn't seen the AC language, so I don't know, given the two motions, what her, where she would kind of weigh in on this. But I think that the advisory committee understands the workload that Fung has and the competing priorities, and that's why they amended their language to provide more flexibility, because they're sensitive to all the other demands that she has.
Mel has his hand raised.
Thank you, Heather. And so I just want to say, I thought Melissa said it very well previously. We are working hard. I hope nobody questions how much commitment we have towards hybrid meetings. I mean, I think we've been a leader in the state in terms of hybrid meetings, and we will continue to be. I don't appreciate having staff kind of stuck in the middle of the wordsmithing here. It doesn't feel right to me to keep asking staff to, I think they're doing the best they can. They're trying in good faith to make both parties happy. I would just suggest you vote it and move on. Either way,
Okay.
you vote it.
I apologize if I'm operating off of bad information. But considering the workload that I know that staff has, I'm probably going to come down on giving them a little bit extra discretion. So let's vote this and see where it lands. All those in favor of the AC's version, say aye. Bernard.
Aye.
Raul.
No.
John.
Aye.
Miriam.
No.
And the chair votes aye. Okay.
It was a
Moving.
vote on language that you haven't seen, right? Just to be clear.
Yes. Okay, moving along. We have our warrant article on the budget.
So we have special town meeting 2, Article 1. The advisory committee had their review of the budget amendment, and they have the board had their motion last week, but the advisory committee has used the budget amendment as a way to address the issues under Article 30. Carla is here to talk a little bit about the advisory committee perspective, but essentially what they did was amended the board's motion under the article in order to provide an opportunity to transfer funds from the reserve fund to town council's claims and settlement account. And then they added some conditional language about efforts that should be made in order to determine whether or not the amount is appropriate. So, and Carla, I'll let you kind of summarize any other information that I did cover.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. I'm Carla Benka, Vice Chair of the Advisory Committee, and I'm here to present the Advisory Committee's recommendation for the Spiegel indemnification article. A public hearing and discussion on Article 30 was included on the October 26th Advisory Committee agenda. Because the article was a funding request, the committee determined that it should be addressed via the budget amendment article of Special Town Meeting 2. The agenda, or the Article 1 of Special Town Meeting 2, was taken up on November 2nd, and the motion before you, at least I hope you have the motion, was approved by a 26-3-0 vote. Last night, the committee took up Article 30 and voted to approve under Article 30 the same motion that it approved under the budget amendment article. The advisory committee's motion recommends reducing the reserve fund in the fiscal 22 budget by $198,050 and transferring that same amount to the claims and settlements account maintained by the Office of Town Council in its fiscal 22 budget. The motion further recommends that the $198,050 be used as payment of a sum not to exceed $169,050 for an indemnification payment to Mr. Spiegel or to his attorney the indemnification payment to Mr. Spiegel and the payment of the sum not to exceed $29,000 would be for payment to Mr. Spiegel or his attorney as a contingent fee for obtaining the indemnification. The payment of both amounts is subject first to the execution of a settlement and release that satisfies both Mr. Spiegel and the town, and second, to either the determination of an outside third-party review as to the reasonableness of both the indemnification payment and the contingent fee payment, or to authorization by the select board to proceed immediately with the payments without going through the third-party review. So in other words, the proposed motion gives the select board the responsibility of approving the settlement agreement to ensure, for example, that it in fact brings matters to an end, and it protects the town against further claims by Mr. Spiegel. And the motion also gives the select board the ability, but not the mandate, to circumvent the third-party review and just reach a settlement with Mr. Spiegel. The advisory committee strongly believes that it's time to end litigation and bring to a conclusion all aspects of the Gerald Alston case. And it encourages you to support its motion under the budget amendment article of special town meeting 2.
Great. I believe Marty Rosenthal requested to speak. He's got up to 5 minutes.
Guess I had to rejoin as a panelist. Is that right?
You're fine right now. We can hear you if you want to turn your camera on.
Yeah, actually, I don't know what I did to the camera. Okay, thank you, and I really appreciate the chair's willingness to let me speak and let me move quickly. First of all, I have to say muzzle tough to Raul because I haven't talked to him since the blessed event. So let me move on. We appreciate and welcome and will support the advisory motions. And Stanley especially appreciated the comments that were made about him. It's been a very difficult, almost 6 years for him. I'm not going to repeat what's in the Article 30 explanation, which many people have not yet looked at, but I'm guessing that the board is among maybe 50 people in Brookline who have looked at it. But I do want to add some things that have come up since then, including the advisory committee discussions. First of all, we didn't say much about the numbers where the 198 came from. The 169,050 is the amounts that Stanley has paid and adding outstanding invoices that we've been waiting to hope that we get success with the indemnity before we make him shell out that extra. I think it's 37,000. Is that? Wait a minute. 30,486. So that's where the 169,050 comes from. The remainder, 29,000, is a very crude compromise on the part of myself and my colleagues to get basically a 17% contingency fee. This has been pursued as a contingency matter, not charging Stanley anything, because it was costing him so much for the case, and we thought that the 258.13 claim was very strong, and we were willing to do it on a contingency. The 17% is a reduced contingency. If this does not get settled appropriately, Stanley will owe us more, and we'll go to court to get more, because I think we'll get more. The legal fees for pursuing indemnity, as I've cited in the explanation, are mandated by the SJC in accordance with the language of save harmless, that you're supposed to save somebody harmless, and therefore, if you have to pay legal fees to get indemnity, you get those back too. So we could fight about that in court if we had to, but we don't want to. We want to do what Carla said and end this right now. And obviously, I have a financial interest in that, although frankly, I'll lose money by this settlement, but that's okay. I do have a financial interest, and I'm acknowledging that. Before getting into the controversies, I do want to put out there that it's now not being disputed that the criteria of the statute apply to Stanley, that it's within the scope of an advisory or a town meeting member's employment to talk to people about a case like the Alston case. I never thought there was should be a dispute about that, but the first vote in 2015 was that Stanley was not acting as a town official at the time of his alleged conduct. And by the way, his alleged conduct is exaggerated from what he really did, but it didn't matter because even the alleged conduct was considered not a civil rights violation. But now nobody's disputing that, and that's a good thing. And by the way, the statute has a very broad definition of public employee, and nobody's disputing that either. So getting to some of the controversies, the advisory committee basically rejected 3 amendments, and the thrust of them was twofold. The first one was to subtract the 20,000 that was still sitting in an escrow account at the court from Attorney Ames for filing a frivolous lawsuit. That should not be deducted from this for 2 reasons. Number one, that 20,000, if you read the magistrate's report on that, the 20,000 is for deterrence. It's basically a punitive thing. And her conclusion was that 20,000 is sufficient to deter future misconduct. And she outlines the criteria for Rule 11 sanctions in 2 footnotes, footnotes 2 and 19, and neither one of them talks about compensation of any kind, let alone compensation for legal fees. Although we did submit our bills at that time, and she dissected them and said that we were asking for too much, but it was irrelevant to her decision and to the Rule 11 statute. So we don't think the town should get the benefit of that 20,000 as a windfall to the town for legal work that the town was not willing to pay for all along. We think Stanley deserves that basically as a pain and suffering for a frivolous lawsuit. So the other amendment was to scrutinize more carefully the legal fees. And the bottom line on the legal fees is, number one, they were at very reduced rates. I normally charge $500 an hour after 49 years of litigation. I represent a lot of lawyers in bar discipline cases, and that's what the market will bear. I've been charging Stanley $300, and the other main person working on the case was also charging $300, which is below her market rate now as well. She's now a partner in the Zalkine law firm. So those fees, I have no doubt they were very reasonable, and to the extent people question that, frankly, I'm insulted by that, but I'll put that aside. The bottom line is Stanley has paid it. He owes it. He's going to pay it. He's going to owe it no matter what happens. And for purposes of settling this, we're not willing to compromise on that amount. And I hope that a neutral person will see it that way, that those were extremely reasonable fees and that that's not going to be an issue, as well as the contingency of 17%. So the other question that's come up is why not use the town lawyers? Well, first of all, that was never offered. In January of 16, after we were
You have
denied.
30 seconds.
Sorry?
You have 30 seconds.
Oh, yeah, thanks. After we were denied indemnity, there was a question about using the town lawyers, but Stanley to pay for them, which is not indemnity. And secondly, there was a conflict of interest from day one. And Devin, if you could put up the slide, please. I didn't mean to stall on my 30 seconds, but I think, do you have it ready, Devin?
It's up.
Yeah, thanks. In conspiracy cases, there is often a conflict of interest between one person alleged as a co-conspirator and the others. That comes up a lot in police cases. And in this case, it was clear from day one that Stanley wanted and would distance himself from the town allegations. And the town people, the 2 who voted against us, would distance themselves from Stanley's alleged conduct. And by the way, his alleged conduct was not what was in the complaint, but even that was not actionable. So there was no doubt that they needed separate lawyers. Stanley needed a separate lawyer, and he needed indemnity. This is from Mass Bar Ethics Committee, which I happen to be on, but I've only been on it since 1996, not 1986. And I'm very abreast of legal ethics, and there was no doubt about this. So finally, just to close, I think it was Carla that mentioned the word finality. We gave Mr. Alston finality last month. Stanley and I and Diana, his wife, voted for the $11 million. But I would assert right now that it's time to finally give finality to the whole matter, including Stanley. He is the only person who has suffered financially in this case. Of all the people, he was the least involved, and he's the most harmed. So I really, financially harmed. And so I really hope that we can get the advisory motion passed. Thank you very much. I appreciate the time.
So just for my edification, I don't know if this is a question more for Melissa or Carla. What happens if this motion fails? How tied to our original warrant article budget is it?
I'm not sure I understand your question. If this were to fail, I suppose there would be a possibility of debating this same issue under Article 30 with perhaps a different motion to consider. I haven't really thought it through yet. I guess in general, the advisory committee is in a wait and see mode in terms of STM2. Melissa pointed out yesterday that if this failed under STM2, it would still be possible for the town to close the books, as it were, and set the tax rate because we're moving existing funds around in the existing budget. And consequently, it should not impact the necessary paperwork that has to take place to satisfy the DOR by I think it's a December deadline.
And I would just add that if this motion failed and 30 failed, the board still has the option to settle the claim and then come to the advisory committee for either a reserve fund or liability fund transfer.
Marty, can you please mute yourself?
Oh, sure.
Raul.
Thanks, Heather. I thought we were going to and so I won't sort of have a debate about the merits of the indemnification because that's not the article before us. The budget is. I think I'm curious, Carla, as to why the AC did not simply say rather than it almost seems like it might be wise for me to say, well, let me set aside some money here in this account just in case 30 passes, even though I don't think it should. But what the AC has put before us is, it almost seems as if the recommendation and the description here and everything is that 30 should pass instead of just saying, hey, let's just stow away some money in this account in case we need it. I don't know. I think it just politicizes this vote in a way that it didn't need to. And I'm just wondering the thinking behind that.
I'm not understanding your question, Raul. Could you try and rephrase it? Why did the advisory committee do this as a budget amendment as opposed to Article 30?
No, that wasn't my question.
Right.
Let me try. I kind of had the same thought. So I guess the problem is we're taking what I see as the second part of the vote first, and we're not having the discussion about whether or not people agree with indemnification. So, I mean, is the moderator going to consider warrant Article 30 first, and then we talk about the budget, or is the plan to vote this budget without knowing whether or not warrant Article 30 is going to pass?
My sense is the advisory committee did not feel that it was well enough informed about the issue of whether this was a situation where indemnification was appropriate. But from everything that we saw and the arguments we read, we didn't hear anybody raise the question or even ask whether it was appropriate. Nobody on the advisory committee said, hey, wait a minute, why are we bothering to indemnify this guy? So we heard nothing in public comment or from anybody else, and basically read the state statute having to do with the indemnification of municipal officials, and felt that it matched up pretty well. In terms of the money per se, and whether it was a reasonable amount, we really felt that it was important that an outside party who was with more experience in making these types of determinations do that work, as we did not wish to prejudge any aspect of the amounts under question.
Thank you. Miriam, and then John.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I really struggle with a lot of the process that's happening here. I think that's what Heather and Raul are getting to. But I'm curious, and I need Marty to answer this, I guess, because I have heard that he is getting paid to bring this article forward. Is that correct?
Devin, if you can try to promote Marty again.
Why am I?
So Marty, the question that Miriam posed is, are you getting paid to, in essence, bring this warrant article forward?
Well, I'm being paid to represent Stanley as our two colleagues, although on this particular, the indemnity thing, they've pretty much left me out in the lurch to deal with all the town issues.
So let me clarify. You are being paid. You're
I'm being
charging
paid to represent Stanley, but not. It's a contingency fee on the indemnity. If either way, I'll be paid. If I have to go to court for this, we'll be paid, and we'll be paid more than 29,000. I'm certain, because either 17% is very low if a court wants to use a contingency fee figure, or if I were to itemize my time, which I could easily do, with including hundreds of emails over the last 5 years. If I have even a minimum of 200 hours, which I'm sure I do, you could do the math on my hourly rate of 500 an hour. So I'd be paid more if we don't settle this. So the short answer is, if you can call being paid a contingency fee where I'm not being paid yet, then the answer is, I guess I am being paid while I'm not being paid.
To me, the short answer is yes, but thank you very much for that.
Okay. John?
Thank you. I want to thank the advisory committee for the work that they have done on this. And I did sit in on the advisory committee meeting where this was discussed and voted upon, and it was a very thoughtful and a very thorough consideration of all of the issues. And I think what this boils down to, I certainly understand the questions and a small degree of confusion perhaps about, why do it this way, not the other way? Why are we taking this up when we haven't taken up Article 30, the indemnification article? But I do think that what this comes down to is, if you think that indemnification should be adopted, then vote yes on this article, because the advisory committee has worked out a way to reach a settlement in this case and to come up with the money to pay the settlement. And they've added, Carla can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think in a very reasonable way, they've added a provision that the bills be reviewed. And if you were thinking of voting against indemnification, you can vote against indemnification. But if indemnification prevails at town meeting, we need a way to pay for it, and this is a way to pay for it. And I'm comfortable with indemnification. I'm more than comfortable. I see this as not just indemnification, but a finality, as I've heard that word used tonight, and it's an important word. Finality is the major reason that I took the vote that I took in favor of the settlement for Gerald Alston. And finality is what we need where Stanley is concerned. And so I do hope the vote is yes tonight. And then I hope the vote is yes at town meeting.
Bernard?
Yeah. Hey, I also want to thank Carla and the advisory committee for working on this and coming up with this solution. I'm going to vote in favor of the budget amendment because for me, it's personal, and it should be personal for each member of this select board and other town residents who commit their time and energy and even their money to this town, who could be sued on a dime, like Stanley and I was sued maliciously in a lawsuit. And we should support this budget amendment to protect ourselves and other residents of the town. You know, that's really all I want to say. This is personal to me. It should be personal to you. I could say a lot more, but I'll leave it at that.
I think I saw Carla trying to speak.
Yes, I just wanted to get back to your question about why are we not taking up Article 30 first? The subject matter of Article 30 will be discussed simultaneously with the budget amendment, according to the assistant moderator. So there will be the opportunity at town meeting to debate the appropriateness of indemnification.
Raul?
Yeah, I just on the again on what's before us, the budget. Maybe some of maybe it's academic. I mean, we have essentially, if this were not to pass, but 30 did pass, we have an advisory committee that is clearly favorable to funding. You know, whatever agreement within bounds, the board was able to reach with the petitioner / attorney for anyway. And so either way, we would find a way to fund it. There's no scenario in which this fails and there's no way to fund this a settlement agreement. Anyway, I just think it's not that it's dumb. It's just I think it's just that it's not the only thing. And this is why I said I just wish it was an amount to say like, hey, there's at least one thing hanging out there. And by the way, who knows what else comes? It might be a good idea to put some extra money into this particular fund. Instead, you know, if I want to vote against the indemnification, you know, someone might use me voting in favor, and because people do this all the time, by the way, me voting in favor of this budget amendment to somehow spin that I or others are in favor of the indemnification itself. I just wish there was just a real nice firewall between the two. There isn't. And so, you know, I'll listen to more of the conversation. I'm inclined to vote against it with the understanding that if 30 passes, we're going to find a way to fund it. So I'm not really too worried about it.
Miriam and then John.
Thank you. So I'm trying to figure out, what happens if this third party reviews the bill and finds that the amount should not be whatever has been outlined specifically in this motion? Then what happens? We've already voted on it. We've already approved it. What's the recourse?
Well, I think the important thing to note is that it's up to a certain amount. They're setting aside an amount, but it doesn't say that will be used.
It's a cap, and if it's less, then the select board will negotiate a payment that's less.
And I'll just add that the surplus will sit in town council's budget in that event.
Mel, did you want to weigh in? Marty, I assume that you wanted to respond, but I'd prefer to just try to keep this discussion amongst ourselves unless there is a question directed towards you. Okay, Mel?
Yeah, I think I see this article as an appropriation article. The ultimate decision about whether to indemnify and how much to indemnify, I believe, is a prerogative of the select board. And what this article does, it provides funding up to a certain amount to do that.
John.
And I don't know what was Article 30 was supposed to do. The way I read Article 30 was supposed to essentially do the same thing, was appropriate money.
John. You're muted, John.
Thank you, Heather. I just wanted to add a thought to this because it's a thought that is not my own. It belongs to Mike Sandman, and he expressed it, and it made a huge impression on me when he expressed this thought during our discussion of the Gerald Alston matter. And he talked about how obviously a lot of people were having trouble getting used to the idea of a settlement that was as large as the settlement was in the Gerald Alston case. But as Mike said, it occurred to him to ask himself the question, for that much money, would I trade places with Gerald Alston?
Oh, come on.
Well,
Bernard, please don't interrupt another select board member.
Bernard, you and I are on the same side of this question, so please don't.
No, we're not.
Please don't.
But
We're not revisiting the Gerald Alston settlement. We're visiting a different question altogether. And my point is in bringing up what Mike said in that case is that it applies to me in this case. And I think it should apply to any member of this board. You know, would we trade places with Stanley Spiegel for the amount of money we're talking about here? The years he's been through of having to not know what was going to be the end result of the damages to him and to his family from this case. I wouldn't have traded places with him. And, you know, I hope that other members of the board, and frankly, when this comes to town meeting, I hope every member of town meeting, and essentially, Bernard, I'm saying the same thing you said. We have to realize that this is about all of us. Indemnification is about all of us, but also the follow through and, you know, the provision of the money to cover the costs that were incurred in this case by an individual who is one of our colleagues at town meeting. And so I have no qualms in voting for indemnification. I have no qualms, although indemnification, I think, to clarify what Mel just said, yeah, a lot of us are sort of puzzled about what exactly is the connection between the two articles. And I see Mel's point on that. But still, even though it's a little confusing why we would need 30, I'd vote for it. For absolute certain, I would vote for paying the full amount that is called for in this particular article under special town meeting 2. And that's why I'm hoping my fellow board members will do the same.
Miriam?
Thank you. I'm just struggling, obviously. And I'm actually not opposed to indemnification per se. I want that conversation. I want to, you know, that's, to me, the issue is the process issue. I don't understand why this didn't come to the select board. I don't understand why it's coming through as an advisory committee, a reserve fund transfer. I feel like this is a workaround. And I'm also really that whole part of it really makes me uncomfortable. And so I'm not actually opposed to indemnification. What I don't like is the process. And so that's really what I'm struggling with here.
Well, I feel the need to paint a little bit of context. To be fair, the select board had taken votes in executive session regarding the indemnification, where it failed, I believe, twice. And Marty has actually been trying to get this on our agenda, and I wanted us to get through the Gerald Alston matter first. And so when we presented that we were going to have a special town meeting, Marty took it upon himself to file a warrant article. And that's how we kind of ended up in this situation. The select board does have the purview. We have taken it up. It was under different boards. We now have new people on those boards, on this board. So it is what it is. John, and then I have some thoughts that I would like to share at some point.
And pardon this additional comment, but I just worry that some people might have misunderstood part of what you said. And you did, in fact, correct yourself subsequently. In saying that the select board voted twice against, 3-2, 2-3, not in favor of indemnification, you're not referring to this select board.
Correct.
Yeah, a prior select board. I don't believe we've taken it up.
No.
Right. All right. I just want to be sure that everyone listening understood that. Yeah.
So one of my biggest sticking points was the amount of expenditures. And, I'm not an attorney, so I was relying on legal advice from our town council. I have been on record supporting indemnification. I do believe that Stanley was targeted because he was an AC member. Do I agree with what he may have said or the way he conducted himself? No, I wasn't in the room. I've heard conflicting reports about what he said, the way he handled himself. But I do believe that he was targeted because he was an AC member and a town meeting member. So I guess I fall in the category of supporting the idea of indemnification. But I am, I guess I'm grateful that the AC has given us a way to frame this to try to get an independent auditor or judge to review the charges. I think that might give me and maybe some other people some comfort about the amount. But I really will listen very carefully to the debate at town meeting. This has been a very long and taxing experience for all of us in town meeting for these past 10, 11 years. So I do also want some finality. You don't have to agree with everything that someone has said or done to make a decision regarding certain facts, I guess. That's not very eloquent, but that's all I have at 8 p.m. tonight. Any other discussion from select board members? So do I need to move reconsideration? Yes.
Yes, currently you're not in line with the advisory committee motion. And so you'd have to reconsider in order to take up their amendments to the budget amendment article.
Okay. So I will move reconsideration, and then after that motion, I will move favorable action on the AC's new version of special town meeting 2, warrant article 1. Okay. Motion to reconsider. All those in favor, Bernard.
Aye.
Raul.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Miriam.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. So now for the motion, favorable action on the AC's updated version. All those in favor, Bernard.
Aye.
Raul.
No.
John.
Aye.
Miriam.
No.
And the chair votes aye. We'll see you at town meeting. So I believe that that was our business for this evening. Next week, we will probably have a select board meeting ahead of town meeting. which will start at 7 p.m. town meeting, not the select board meeting. So stay tuned for things that will, I'm sure, inevitably crop up heading into town meeting that the select board will need to vote on. Thank you very much.
Night, everybody.
Good night,